good morning on Thursday, August 24th, in the aftermath of the Samsung experience. It's episode 273 of the 359 podcast. I'm BVG, and in the house today, we got Ben Fox, Rubin, Roger Cheng, and Jessica Dolcourt is back with us again.
Woo! Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. How are we recovering?
Recovering.
Slowly.
Fine.
Very slowly.
I mean, some of
I'm
us are a
fine.
little hungover.
I wouldn't say that.
No, I wouldn't say that.
I wouldn't say that on air.
We just did.
As suggested by our headline, we are going to be answering even more questions on the Galaxy Note 8. I mean, that's still...
Because you did a kind of a fair, not great job
we
yesterday.
did a crap job. All right,
I
let's
would give
admit
us
it.
a B+.
No, we were like a C+ at most.
And that's why they
And
sent
so
Jessica in.
We have to have the expert
They flew me out all the
The
way
re-
from San Francisco for this
just
podcast.
for this podcast. Nothing else. Nothing else. So if you have any
Worth
questions
every
for
penny.
Jessica and not for us, leave them in the comments section. Brian will get to them in 3 minutes and 59 seconds.
And here we go for the recording of the podcast. See you back in the chat in a couple of minutes here. In 3, 2...
Welcome to the 359. I'm Roger Cheng.
I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
And with us is special guest Jessica Dolcourt.
Hey.
Hey.
Hello.
So we tried to give you everything on the Galaxy Note 8 and yesterday, and we failed miserably.
We did
so
okay.
we had to bring in the professional. We had to bring in Jessica, who's probably spent the most time with the Note 8
Yep.
out of anyone at CNET. She has a hands-on. So just quickly to sum up, bottom line from the hands-on, from the early impressions that you got from the phone, what do you think?
I think it's pretty good. I said before, and I'll say it again, that I feel like this is the Note 7 that we should have had, but and then some, right? So this is Samsung's first phone. That's the Note return after the Note 7 debacle. It's also the first phone ever from Samsung with dual cameras, which is really cool, but also necessary because pretty much every other high-end phone has dual cameras or will have dual cameras.
Right.
So
I
it's
didn't
something
even
they kind of
realize
like
that.
had to have. If
Yeah.
they
Well,
didn't,
I mean,
it would have been a huge fail.
So to that point, I mean, how do you think the Note 8 will stack up? Because we're getting into phone season.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
got the iPhone coming out. We've got a Pixel 2 coming out.
LG V30.
LG V30. Lots of super premium phones coming out. How do you think this is going to stack up?
I think pretty good for my early impressions. There's a feature that's basically their version of portrait mode that they're calling live focus. And I think it goes a step further from what we have now
Right.
on the iPhone 7 Plus, but that of course could change with Apple's next phone. There are just a few more features in it. There are some more controls over the blur. There's a little bit more that you can do with capturing images. And Samsung has a really good track record with photography, with low light photography. There's dual optical zoom, which is something that we expected, but
Yep.
there's also dual optical image stabilization, OIS, on both the camera lenses, and that's going to be really good for low light pictures. When you take video, it means that it won't shake as much, so your video image will remain more steady. At the hands-on briefing that I went to, they had set up a box, and the companies love to troll each other. So they had set up this demo station where they had the iPhone 7 Plus, kind of like
Shaking.
shaking,
Yeah.
and then they had the Note 8 shaking. And
I always
there was a
wa-
noticeable difference,
I
but of
saw
course
that-
you want to test it yourself.
I saw the box too, and I always wondered, like, maybe they like adjusted it so the
And so it
iPhone was
shakes a little
looser.
bit more.
Right, like, when they start they were whacking at the box, the demo that I saw. I'm like, are you whacking it on the iPhone side harder?
Oh,
or-
I actually tapped the box myself,
Oh.
and it was right in the middle.
Okay.
So with the Note 8, though, is the camera really the big selling point? I kind of feel like it's supposed to be like the stylus, like it's supposed to be like for power users that you're supposed to get a lot of work done with this thing.
Yeah, so traditionally, the Note series is for power users. It's got the stylus, and usually it has the more cutting-edge features, but this is really a blend between the Note 7 of last year and the Galaxy S8 of this year, S8 Plus, really, because it's pretty much the same size. So I think that Samsung, these phones are closer together than they ever have been. There's less differentiation. So the camera is pretty much it. The stylus is pretty much it. We didn't have a lot of the features that they were talking about in all the rumors, like being able to talk into the
Oh, the S
pen.
Pen, yeah.
Yeah, the
That
S
would've been- that
Pen.
would've been cool.
Or
I thought that was so
a
weird.
touch
Why do that?
sensitive screen,
Right.
like the iPhone has, and just all of these things. And in the end, you're kind of like, okay, it is the most premium Samsung phone that you can get.
Right.
If you're not going to get it for the stylus, you're probably getting it for the camera.
Right. But then again, like, I would
But it's
say,
expensive.
I would say 6 months ago, if you drew up a list of features that the Note 8 would have had, like that list would probably be pretty accurate. Right? There was like nothing that really kind of surprised us, right?
Correct. I think Samsung played it safe, and I think it's very obvious that part of the reason is because, people didn't get to keep their Note 7s.
Yeah.
So if you're making the jump from the Note 5, and
Yeah,
remember they skipped
totally.
the Note 6
Yep.
name, but if you're making the jump from the Note 5 to the Note 8,
That's
it's
huge.
It's cut.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you're
big.
going to see a lot of difference there. If you are wondering if you're going to get an S8 and S8 Plus or the Note 8, it's going to be a lot closer. It might come down to price for you, or it might come down to features. Samsung is definitely going to try to sweeten the deal by offering deals and bundles, and
Right.
carriers might reduce the price. One great thing about the holiday season, if you are considering getting this phone, is that there are a ton of promotions. So Samsung's trying to get you to pre-order the phone with gifts. However, if you waited to see what came out with all of the phones that we have coming up, and you wait for holiday, there will be a lot more promotions and deals. So it might actually wind up being cheaper in certain ways.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
All right, well, we got to wrap it up here. For all of Jessica's coverage and CNET's coverage on the Galaxy Note 8, check us out on CNET. I'm Roger Cheng.
I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
And I've been Jessica Dolcourt still.
Thanks for listening.
We have a few questions about additional features in the chat. Can we floor those?
Do it.
Bring it.
All
That's
right.
what she's here for.
Perry asks, does it have a heart rate sensor?
Oh, no, right?
Yeah, it's all. Samsung hasn't taken away features.
Okay.
So if it was in the S7, the S8, etc., it's going to be in the Note 8.
I didn't even realize the heart rate sensor was in. Like, they never talked about
Yeah,
that.
it's on the back. Yeah.
Oh, is it
so
the fingerprint
Samsung,
reader, or-
yeah. So
Okay.
Samsung tends to talk about the new features, and we were having this discussion yesterday, like, oh, whatever happened to Smart Stay, which is if you look at the screen and then you look away. So Samsung doesn't really strip those away; they just
Wait,
kind
so
of
is that
bury
still
them.
the Smart Stay still a thing?
You know, I didn't check, but it
It's
hasn't
likely
been
that it-
removed to
Got
the
it.
best of my knowledge.
Got it.
Or sometimes, like, these aren't preloaded, but you can still get them through various Samsung apps where you
Oh,
just
okay.
download certain individual items, but they're still there. There are just so many features. It's overwhelming. And most people aren't using all of them. So I feel like every year there are more gimmicky features.
I mean, you raise a good point because I feel like, I mean, the knock on Samsung for years, despite the great build and design of the phones, is a lot of bloatware. And I feel like that hasn't gone away. It's gotten actually worse, right?
Samsung, well, they did streamline tremendously.
For the S8 and on, I mean, they created their own internet browser. They had mostly for devs.
Yeah,
but
the
they had a
messaging
whole,
app.
They had a
and
whole
blah, blah,
bunch
blah,
of like
blah.
random, and then if you tack on the carrier preload stuff, I mean, that's a lot of bloatware, right?
Sometimes I think that they're really good Samsung features, and sometimes Android adopts them, and then everyone's really excited.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
oh my God, Android got, like, Android Beam was a great example that came from
Oh yeah,
Samsung.
yeah.
But there are other times when you remember that Samsung is not really a great software company,
Yep.
and they should stick to hardware. But what they're trying to do, what every vendor, OEM as we would call them, tries to do is differentiate.
Yep.
And really the only way to do that is to layer their own software on top of what Google is providing.
So, by the way, where is the fingerprint sensor on this thing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was such a big
Yeah.
deal with the S8.
Yeah, and it's a really big deal for me because I
Still a big
cannot
deal.
stand this design. I think it's the worst. It doesn't make any
For the
sense.
S8?
Is it even worse for the Note 8 because of the way it's longer?
Yeah, so to answer your question, the fingerprint reader is on the back and it is off to the side of the camera.
Okay.
So
Just like the S8, right?
now I haven't measured it, which is something that I'm going to do when I get the review unit in, but it's a tall phone. So
Yep.
the S8, my hands are like not the biggest in the world. So, I'm reaching on the S8. I'm really reaching on the S8 Plus, and I'm curious to see, again, I haven't measured it. I didn't really spend a lot of time like deeply comparing, but I will. I want to see if it's moved even further off to the side because of the dual camera array on the back. I just don't understand why the sensor can't be centralized underneath.
Yep.
I
feel like the Pixel kinda
every
has,
other
yeah,
phone
the Pixel
has
it
it.
kind of perfectly in that center. It's a natural way to hold your phone, and I don't know. Like Samsung
I also
just doesn't
really
get
like
that.
fingerprint readers and the power lock button on the side. I think it's
Oh,
a great
yeah.
target area. It's like 100% accuracy,
Which
pretty much.
was the Robin.
So Sony
Remember
phones do that, and
the
the next
Robin?
bit Robin
Yeah,
did it,
yeah,
and that was
yeah.
like my favorite thing
That was
about
really-
them.
that was
Fingerprint
actually
sensor
really
on
awesome.
The side.
Yeah,
It's on the side,
Yeah,
it's part
I
of the
didn't
power
realize
lock
that.
button.
It's really, actually, it was really great.
It's sensible because part of the problem for me with a fingerprint sensor on the back is like how many of you sit with your phone just laying down? It's next to
Yeah.
you. Do you really want to pick up your phone, or do you really want to swipe and then do your backup pin, or like
Right.
you're gonna pick it up and do the iris scanner when it's laying down? I find it really annoying.
Side button. you can
Side
snap
button is pretty easy.
Yep.
Or even on the front, like that's fairly easy as well.
R.I.P. Next Bit Robin.
So
It's
let's
too bad.
It's okay. We have the Essential to talk about instead as the next like up and comer.
Let's branch off what you were just talking about with the design, because Sarab in the chat asks, do you guys like that tall design? He says, he or she says, I can't tell. It means it's very unconventional and uncomfortable to handle, it seems. How do you feel about it?
I don't find it uncomfortable at all. The rounded sides really help with that. But again, like for me, like that phone is never going to be a one-handed phone for me.
Right. I would actually argue that it's becoming the new convention, because I think the iPhone's going to have a very similar long stream design.
Yeah.
LG already has this.
Yeah, it's
the Essential
slim.
phone is kind of like that, right?
So for a while, we were seeing really chunky phones that were
Yeah,
wide. Like
yeah.
there was like an HTC brick that I remember just trying to hold. And for me, if they're heavy, if they have like sort of thick sides and sharp edges, and it's wide in my grip, then that is what's uncomfortable for me. I don't really mind. And I also personally believe that people are adaptable. We kind of get used to it.
Yeah, that's true.
We got another question here from Lord Havoc. He says, Jessica, what's the battery consumption like so far? How long does it last?
That's a great question. And I
I
don't
haven't had
know.
enough time
because-
with it yet.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have the Note 8.
Right.
Well, we do know the battery is smaller than last year's model.
It's
the
smaller.
3300 versus a 3500.
3500.
Right.
Yep. So Samsung said they did acknowledge that part of the reduced capacity of the battery itself is because they wanted to leave more space in the
Yep.
cavities, so
Yep.
within the cavity of the phone, so that they wouldn't repeat the same mistakes as last year. But
For
then they
safety
also
reasons.
promised, oh, well, really, it's faster than the Note 7, which is possible because if they're streamlining.
They say it's supposed to last
Their
longer
processing.
because the processor runs on the Snapdragon processor is a more power efficient processor.
Yes, exactly.
And so they kept saying all day battery life, which was kind of an ambiguous term. Like all day is different for different people.
Right, depending on what you're doing. You're not going to
Right.
get all day battery life if you're navigating 5 hours a day and
Yeah,
streaming
exactly.
music. Streaming this podcast on repeat.
Streaming exactly this very podcast all the time.
We have another good question here.
Yeah.
From Poikata Carey. I think I'm getting that right.
Ooh, great name.
Asking, does it support all of the apps for the multi-window split view?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
Because the app has to itself be provisioned to be used in those dimensions, basically.
Yeah, I think they said that it's any
It's
app
a-
that's
it's a lot of
compatible with
apps.
Android's multi-view
Right.
thing, which isn't every app.
Which was another thing, by the way, that Samsung
Samsung
started
one. Yeah, that's
and,
right.
and Google adopted.
Actually, did Samsung or LG start? Because I feel like LG
Was it-
had a multi-window thing that no one cared about because no one bought LG phones. Because I remember
I'm
they
going to
had
put
it
my money
for-
on Samsung. I might be wrong, but I'm putting my money on Samsung.
I feel like LG had. Well, maybe I'm wrong. I just remember they had it, and like everyone was like, "Oh, that's cool," and then proceeded to not buy the phone, which has been LG for a while.
Yeah.
Braden asks, is the special offer for previous Note 7 owners worldwide or just for the U.S.?
Well, I got an update yesterday that it's just for the U.S. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it's just for the U.S. for now. Although
You would
I
think that they
don't
they
know.
have to start and target different areas from a legal perspective, so they're probably starting here and then it'll move to the other
I mean, I think
regions.
it's partly because the U.S. is the biggest market. They want to start here. That's
Right.
priority.
Yeah.
I
What-
did get
the real question is how much did my article influence this? Because I would like to take 100%
I would say,
full credit.
I would say yeah. I would say it's 100% Jessica.
Yes.
Frankly,
You're welcome.
there should be like an asterisk in that press release, like because of CNET's Jessica Dolcourt. We're doing
Exactly.
this.
One thing I will say though is that it appears that this promotional deal apology blood money it appears that this is only happening through Samsung.com.
Yes.
And I'm not sure, I've been asked before, but I'm not sure if the carriers will participate in any way. My guess is probably not.
Yeah. So I've actually got.
And I think you're just going to have to decide. You know,
I
do
got
you
a
go
note
with
from
your carrier
Samsung.
trade-in, or do you want to go with Samsung?
I got a note from Samsung this morning, actually, just confirming that you have to basically, if you register the phone with Samsung, then it shouldn't be a problem. But you have to do it through Samsung. If you didn't register your phone, which some people don't, you have to present a proof of purchase for the phone to be able to be eligible for this discount.
You would think they'd be able to tell through activations, but that might just be
No,
too
'cause
much
activations
work
are
on
the
the back
carriers.
end. Yeah, but they were working with the carriers to
But
retrieve the phones.
that's the thing. I don't think they're.
I guess they
I don't-
weren't taking down like
I don't think the
names
carriers
and
are
lists.
like helping out with this because the carriers have their own promotions and
Exactly.
as you
BOGOs.
as you pointed out, like once those other phones pop up, like you're gonna see a ton of promotions. Like I know they're supposed to be bundling stuff with the phone now, but like it seems like a better bet to wait for sure.
Unless you really want a Gear 360.
Right? Yeah. And who doesn't?
Cyril in the chat is really adamant to find out if there's going to be action memo. I don't even know what that means.
What is it?
There is a new note app. I'm trying to remember like specifically. I don't recall if I saw action memo, but you should totally watch the video and look in the air command wheel to see if it's there. There's definitely screen off memo, which
Yeah.
is when you can write on the lock screen, basically,
Oh,
which
we
is
talked about that yesterday.
really
Yeah, it was
cool.
nice.
It's really cool. I love that.
What is action memo?
It's like an easier way to create a little memo,
Oh, okay.
a note to yourself.
Those are
But
nice
there's
little things,
There's
but-
a new write a note. Samsung has tried to simplify all of the note apps and the writing apps. It was getting a little confusing. I think Action Memo is one of those things that always confused me.
Samsung
because
confusing
I
apps?
just opened
What?
up the note app if I was going to use it. But in the air command, that's the little
Yeah.
like wheel, the menu wheel, the navigation menu wheel for the stylus. There is a direct write a note from there,
okay.
and I thought that was pretty handy.
There you go.
We got a two-parter here from Lost Legacy. They ask, how is the latency on the S Pen and the UI in general? And is Bixby still pointless?
Oh, well, we'll have to let you answer
All right.
all these.
I don't know which one I want to answer first. I kind of want to answer Bixby first, but latency seemed really good in my test so far. Again, I don't have the review unit. That's something that would pop up. That was a big issue that I noticed when I reviewed the original Galaxy Note. There were all these issues with writing, and I think that Samsung has really gotten pretty good. They're licensing all of this from Wacom. So
Oh, okay.
it's not all their technology, but they're also creating the software interface and connections so that their software will talk to the S Pen.
What about Bixby?
What about Bixby?
Oh my. Okay, well, there's the Bixby button. Samsung has,
It exists.
The
yes,
thing.
They didn't get rid
made
of it
Bixby
yet.
a thing in 200 countries now,
Right.
which
It doesn't speak
It was
200 languages,
English,
though.
it's English.
late
It's
on.
English in
South-
200
it's
countries.
English and Korean, I believe, are the two languages. Is that it?
right now, English is definitely one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was in South Korea and it was in the U.S.
Yeah, and they
So
they
it's
talked about it.
launched,
Yeah.
but it is still very much a work in progress. They said that I think the figure I got was that there was uptake of 30% of users in the U.S. I'm not sure how many of those activations were on purpose and how much was somebody pressing the button.
by accident.
And like, what does
grazing
this
it, like-
do? Does this work? So, I mean, the big thing to remember is that Bixby is not Siri. Bixby is not Google Assistant. Google Assistant's on the phone. Bixby is the voice analog for everything you can do tapping the phone.
Right.
So there are all these crazy commands that they showed off. But the thing is, like, all of those commands are things that you can do. It just has to occur to you either to do it or to ask for it in that way.
Right.
I don't know that I'm a person who has trained myself to think that way. So the example that they gave yesterday was like, open the camera and take the picture in food mode. So I really like nested commands. I think
thought that
that's-
was cool, too.
I think it's really great. And what's exciting about it is what it can mean for every other digital assistant or virtual assistant is that once you have that structure in place, there's so much that you can do. I mean, imagine using it the way that you would use Siri or Google Assistant, where you're
Right.
asking like a nested command and it totally understands what you want. And then you can just sort of like stream of consciousness, go about it. But the problem is that Bixby is still very limited in that way to only things that you can do on your phone.
Right.
So if it's something simple where you're like, oh, my hands are full, but hey, turn off Wi-Fi or turn on Wi-Fi or something like that, that's actually a really nice use case. Or like, I use phones all day. So like sometimes my hands get tired and I don't want to use them. Right. And that's when something like voice dictation is very useful for me. So is it useless? I mean, it doesn't do everything that it could do. And I think that if you want to take full advantage of it, you kind of have to play around with it and really invest some
how's
time
the
in
accuracy?
learning how to use it. So the accuracy is okay.
Okay.
It's pretty accurate for some things, but I also just feel like voice assistants in general don't always work.
Yeah.
So sometimes I don't do them because I'm like, wow, I've wasted all this time trying to make it easier on myself, and I didn't. The one thing I will say about Bixby that is kind of great is that it will get you halfway there. So if it doesn't know like fully what you're saying, if you say open the camera and take this in food mode and it messes up, but it might open the camera.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like grandma. It's the grandma of voice assistants.
There we go.
Speaking
Like it
of
means
which,
well, and they try, and it's very sweet, but sometimes it misses the mark. Is that a good review?
Sounds like you need to call your grandma.
Oh, by the way,
Speaking of which,
wait.
Samsung is planning on now putting this into a smart speaker, right?
Right. So the goal with Bixby was always that it is going to be ecosystem wide. So you can imagine that
Your
we're going to
refrigerator.
start.
I'm going to talk
Exactly.
to my refrigerator soon.
Refrigerator, washing machine.
It's just we're not quite
Samsung
there yet with this
TV.
thing.
We're not. And so this is a test bed, really. And so they're going slow. And I think that's okay in a way. In a way, they might not really care who uses it on the phone if the goal is to just start slowly and kind of not like mangle it so badly that they have to pull it back and
Right.
release all these OTAs and blah, 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 blah.
Just going back to the screen off memo, or just the memo in general, like, does it have handwriting recognition? Like, can I transfer to, like, if I jot down a to-do list?
It will convert it to text.
Really?
Not on screen off memo, I don't think, but on a
Okay.
regular note, yes.
Really?
God, I remember the
Dang.
Newton could
I
do that.
I need to buy the Note 8 for that.
But again, it's one of those things where I write it, my writing is so bad that I keep like looking. I'm like, did it get it right? Did it get it right? Damn it, I'll just type it myself.
yeah, okay, yeah, yeah.
All right, we're almost out of time, but we want to get at least one more question in. Matthew Cox has a really good one. He says, with this phone shape, are cases practical?
I think a case is always necessary.
Yeah, especially with that curved glass screen. I feel like you're just asking.
I just think
for it.
if you're going to invest this much money in a phone, okay,
It's almost $1,000.
yeah, well, let's say it's not. Let's say that you go through Samsung's trade-in because you were a Note 7 owner and you get $425 off, right? Like, so it's still an expensive phone.
Yep.
You still want to preserve the resale value and the trade-in value, especially, well, always. I mean, if you want to sell it, if you want to pass it on to somebody else,
Yep.
like you never want to go out of your way to break your phone. So I always recommend a case, and I always recommend. I'm also like a butterfinger, so cases have saved my devices. I would recommend a case, and I would recommend a screen protector, but at least a case that kind of has a lip that comes out over the side, so that if it does fall, splat first, face first.
Although with the curved screen, how would that even work? With the curved sides?
Wait, with the cases?
Yeah.
Oh, Samsung has made cases, and all the case makers have made cases
That
for
have,
these
like,
phones
Adds a
forever.
bezel.
But like, it adds a bezel for the lip.
That's all.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that kind of defeats the whole
Right. I
damn
think that's why.
purpose.
I think that's why he was asking that. Is what's the point then?
The point is protecting your investment.
Yeah.
Look,
It looks
nobody's
beautiful,
going to
but you
make
don't see
you
it.
get a case. Ever.
I know.
Nobody's going to force you to get a case.
My
but,
Pixel goes naked.
You risk it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
You do. And do you have a crack on the back of the glass?
The Pixel? No.
It's only a matter of time.
I've had it for a year.
just jinxed
Wait,
you.
not a year. Well, I've had it for a while.
I want to say one more
better go
thing
knock on
about
wood.
the colors. I'm really sad that the U.S. doesn't get
Was it the blue?
the maple gold and deep sea blue because
Yeah.
those are the
Good
best.
Lord.
We get the
That's
boring
a
colors.
color?
We
We
always get the boring
midnight
color.
black and orchid gray.
Black and gray. That's all we get.
And the
Black
gray
and
is
gray.
kind of a
Right.
weird gray. It's
Yeah,
sort of like
not-
it's orchid gray, right? So it's supposed to be sort of like purpley, vaguely like suede or something. I think it looks like a brown gray. I think it looks a little muddy, personally. Like it's fine.
I don't know.
So we got to wrap it up real quick, but elephant in the room is price. And one last question. Will the price of the S8 or S8 Plus reduce because of the Note 8 release? And does it come with dual SIM option?
I would be very surprised if the price were to reduce.
Well, no, the price has gone down for the S8 already. Like you see discounts everywhere for that.
Because
thing.
it's been out since
just
March.
because it's been out for a while.
Let me finish.
Okay, sorry, sorry.
I don't know that Samsung will reduce the retail
Oh,
price,
yep.
but I think that the retailers will. Exactly as Roger said.
Yep.
The carriers are going to drop it to move product. I mean, they've bought the product. Like carriers, the stores,
Yeah.
they've already bought it. They've got it sitting around. So they can do whatever they want with it. So yes, I think that will drop. Obviously, we're going to see last year's model drop, not the Note 7 because nobody has it. But the Note 5 will probably get really cheap.
Will this sell
The
the Note 5 still at
S7,
that point? It's
all
like
of those have already dropped. But I think that we're going to start to see some really competitive pricing, especially if you're patient and you wait a little while.
All right, I think that's about where we got to wrap it up for the day.
All right.
Thanks for
the
having me,
week.
guys. This was
Hey,
great.
yeah, it's Thursday already.
Already.
Whoa.
We blew through this week.
Yeah, it went by in a blur. Well, thank you, Jessica.
A blur like portrait mode? I mean, live focus?
Ooh, good segue.
Nicely done.
Well done. All right. If you liked anything you saw or heard here, check us out on CNET. Our podcast is also available on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, FeedBurner, and Google Play Music.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great weekend. We'll see
Have
you
a
next
great
week.
weekend.